Hello, my name is Kaylee Novak, and I did my protein project on lactase. Before I get started, I just wanted to go over some fast facts about lactose. Lactose is a hydrolase enzyme found in the intestinal villi. It is the protein responsible for catalyzing the hydrolysis of lactose. Lactose is a sugar typically found in milk that is composed of glucose and galactose, and lactase is what breaks that up. And so 50% of the world's population has a lactase deficiency, which means that their bodies are unable to properly break down lactose. And because of this, we have a lot of research that's been done to see if there are ways to either cure lactose intolerance or create products that can allow people to properly digest lactose. And so shown in the right here is the crystal structure of lactase, as can be seen on the right. Now I'm going to talk about the biochemical role of lactase. As I mentioned before, lactase is responsible for the hydrolysis of lactose into glucose and galactose. And so lactase deficiency is commonly known as lactose intolerance. And when a person is lactose intolerant, it means that they can't hydrolyze lactose. And so when your body doesn't properly digest lactose, it ends up being fermented by bacteria into short fatty acid chains, methane and hydrogen gas. When this occurs, it causes some pretty intense symptoms like bloating, diarrhea, cramping, and abdominal pain. These are pretty intense symptoms that a lot of people are trying to find ways to get around them and not have to deal with this. And the reason that so many people have a lactase deficiency is because most people stop producing lactase after weaning. However, in a lot of Northern European countries, people had lactase be a regular part of their diet, which is why there's this, you'll see in the world, most people from Northern European descent are lactose tolerant, whereas people in other countries who didn't consume milk that wasn't human after birth end up being lactose intolerant. Listed here are two papers that were published recently about lactase. The first paper listed on the left is a study that's looking to understand the relationship between galactose, lactase, and nephropathy, which is a type of kidney dysfunction. And so what this paper wanted to look at was specifically galactose deficiency, and they believe that this deficiency could be due to lactose intolerance, which would mean basically that there's less galactose and less glucose in the body, and they wanted to see if that was causing any additional problems to a patient's nephropathy. The second paper shown on the right is about research that looks into improving gut microbiota compositions for patients with lactose intolerance. This paper was mainly looking at ways to alleviate symptoms of lactose intolerance, such as diarrhea, bloating, and constipation. So one of the papers that I did my protein project on was about a lactase treatment for consumers. This was an experimental treatment that basically created a pill with lactase enzyme in it, and it compared it with a common drugstore brand to see which pill was better at alleviating symptoms. And so patients involved in this study were given either the experimental drug or the control pill, and were told to take it for 42 days in a row. And so on day 42, patients were given a solution of lactose and consumed it, and then performed a hydrogen breath test. And so this test basically involves having a patient sit for about 3 hours and breathe into a machine that measures the concentration of hydrogen in their breath. If you are lactose intolerant and you've consumed lactose, what happens is that when it gets broken down into those short fatty acid chains, methane and H2, the H2 travels into the lungs by osmosis and ends up being exhaled in your breath. And so that increase in H2 indicates lactose intolerance. And so as you can see in this graph on the right, the dotted line is the control pill, whereas the solid line is the new experimental drug. And as you'll notice over time, the concentration of hydrogen in the control group ended up increasing, showing that the body was not digesting lactose, whereas the experimental product, while it did increase, it did not increase as significantly, showing that this new drug was better at alleviating symptoms and allowing the body to digest lactose. Now I'm going to talk about some future directions for research into lactase. So one of the papers I read was about genetic mutations and using them to cure lactase deficiencies. When you read papers about lactase, most of them are about creating products to alleviate the symptoms of lactose intolerance, but not actually curing it. And so this paper proposed creating a pill with a virus vector inside it that alters intestinal cells. And so this virus contained DNA that was basically coded to make cells create lactose. And so the pill, once consumed, would travel to the intestine where the virus would rewrite the cells to specifically produce lactase. And so this pill was actually tested on a group of rats, and over 6 months, the rats were able to show significant improvement in their ability to digest lactose. The solution itself was effective for at least 6 months, but after being given the pill, it took about 2 weeks for it to become fully effective. And this is one of the few papers I've seen personally about finding a way to cure lactose deficiency. Thank you for listening. Here are my references.